clients. I'm often asked by constituents and friends, if we care so deeply about end client financial outcomes, why is so much of the conversation about the momentum of the business of advisory? Well, we believe very adamantly that those advisory businesses most likely to produce superior outcomes for clients are robust, thriving, and profitable businesses that are growing. Those practices most likely to produce negative outcome for clients are struggling, unprofitable, and not growing. So that ability to drive momentum in the business, to drive organic growth, which we define as an advisor's ability to gain a greater share of wallet from existing clients and attract, win, and retain new client assets for the long term, are very indicative of a practice that's providing superior value for money. So we've got two great examples of that from abroad to bring to you here today. And I'd like to invite to the stage Patty Brennan and Scott Carmichael. Thank you. Thank you. Let me tell you a bit about our speakers here today. Patty Brennan is a certified financial planner. She's the president and CEO of Key Financial, which is wealth advisory, independent wealth advisory business in Westchester, Pennsylvania, about 45 miles outside of the city of Philadelphia. She had a circuitous route to the wealth management industry. She graduated Georgetown University with a degree in nursing and worked as an ICU nurse in oncology before channeling her compassion for others into becoming a financial advisor. In a small town, we call that, growing suburb of Philadelphia. She's turned, since she founded Key Financial in 1990, what was a humble financial planning firm at the time.
Like out of my laundry room.
Okay.
Humble.
To managing in excess of $1.1 billion in client investments. It is thriving, hugely growing, and has earned her a perennial ranking in Barron's top advisor lists in the U.S. To her left, Scott Carmichael has come a very long way to be here. Scott is a senior investment advisor, partner, and principal at Escala Partners, which is a boutique independent investment and wealth advisory firm with offices in Melbourne and Sydney, Australia. Scott describes their firm
and
no, slight difference, another 5 hours to the left. He describes the firm as having a focus on assets and liabilities in their entirety. He graduated Monash University with a degree in politics and business marketing, but then got a graduate diploma in applied finance and investments. He had businesses at Merrill Lynch and UBS before forming Escala Partners. When was the formation? 2013.
2013.
Scott has been perennially ranked over 4 years in our list of top advisors in Australia, that publishes in the Australian, and was previously number 1 on that ranking. Patty, Scott, you've come a long way. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for being here.
Yeah. I'd start out and give a little color to your perspective and vantage point on the business. Can you describe your current business and tell us a little bit about your journey to that point? Patty?
Well, Sterling, it's as you said, it's a little non-traditional, to say the least. I started it over 30 years ago in literally what most people would call their laundry room. I was able to grow the business. I have 4 children, and we have currently 24 employees, and again, over $1.1 billion. I think that the momentum has really accelerated in the last 5 years, and I'll be happy to share with you one of the reasons why I think that is. Just as Sterling said, our focus really is on the big picture. It's really on the financial planning and helping our clients crystallize in their minds what they really want their life to look like, and help them to organize their financial affairs and optimize them. So that's basically...
What's the typical account size?
It's interesting. A lot of people say, gee, Patty, what's your minimum? I really don't have a minimum per se. I would say our average account size is between $1 and $3 million.
Okay, the millionaire next door.
Yeah, perfect description. Okay. Exactly.
Scott, you and your team are now managing over 1.3 billion. What was your path to the business, and can you describe a little bit about how you position the firm now?
Sure. So my journey began here, actually, about 25 years ago. I was working across the road there for Deutsche Bank, and I was sort of one of those Aussies that came over here and did the thing that we do over here. I went back to Australia and was in stockbroking. So, for me, I started at Merrill Lynch, which was a great entree into sort of financial advice with stockbroking. But then progressed towards UBS, which I worked for 13 years, and 7 of us founded Scala Partners 7 years ago. We felt that we were targeting the ultra high net wealth and family generational planning space, which is our niche market. So for us, we're a firm that over the last 7 years has grown. We saw an opportunity in that space and we capitalised on that space. And 7 of us started. We walked out of UBS, much to their despair and our challenge. And sort of 7 years later, as a firm, we managed just over $6.5 billion Australian dollars. So it's not as strong as
Position though as a highly sophisticated discretionary portfolio manager.
It's not discretionary, so we're very much an advisory firm. Everyone's different. We don't manufacture any of our own product, and we do run as isolated teams. One of our major focuses was to match advisor skill to client need, and we didn't find those in the big wirehouses. It was a client would walk in and it was a race to the door. So we found we want to create, and we think we have, a very targeted firm that really focuses on that higher end, larger scale family, and all of those families are different. Everyone's different. So 7 years later, we're sort of 64 staff, 3 locations, and my immediate team is 5, and we manage just on 1.5 billion Australian dollars.
Very different businesses. What they have in common is outstanding year-over-year organic growth, their ability to attract a greater share of wallet from existing clients and net new families, but also that's tied with impeccable long-term client retention, which again is the hallmark of a firm that's earning longevity in their business. We understand there's a healthy debate here in the UK wealth advisory community whether the future will be led more by firms that are orienting in that investment-focused discretionary portfolio manager orientation, or those that are focused in more of a holistic planning-centric business. We believe that where the most elegant merger of those two functions takes place is most likely the highest client experience. So firms that are approaching both sides of that and figuring out how to achieve that harmonized union between both planning and superior sophisticated investment performance have the most likelihood to elevate that client experience. Let's talk for a minute about breakthrough moments. You had this business over the arc at the time. If you think back, were there some moments that a decision that you made or something that happened that significantly changed the trajectory of your business? And if you think about those breakthrough moments, what did you learn from that? Anything come to mind, Patty?
Yeah, when I think about that, Sterling, there were actually 2 breakthrough moments. I'll tell you the more recent one. It actually happened in a meeting exactly like this. It was a Barron's conference down in Florida. And, we were having one of those, the breakout sessions had concluded. It was one of these hallway conversations, and I was talking with a colleague, and I was asking, how has your year been, et cetera. And she said, I'm having a really good year. I brought in $50 million this year. And I'm thinking to myself, $50 million? Like the average person in America the average advisor manages $56 million. So that was like, wow. I would love to be at a place to be able to say that I brought in 50. I'd love to be able to do that someday. So I was also reading a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. This book changed my business. And so I came back to the office, we had a firm meeting, and I talked to my team about that conversation. And I said, wouldn't it be cool, which are 4 dangerous words that come out of Patty Brennan's mouth, wouldn't it be cool if, and I said, if we could do this, we could set a goal together as a team, and at the end of the year, I'll give you a bonus based on, whatever. It was very kind of I don't know, it wasn't even very clear in terms of what it meant for the team. And so I said, what do you think we could do? We were averaging about 30. And they said, well, if that person can bring in $50 million, so can we. And I'm thinking to myself, are you guys sure? Like $50 million? So anyway, make a long story short, that first year, we brought in $63 million. And each person in my firm, it doesn't matter what you do, whether you're a CFP, MBA, CFA, whether you do photocopying and scanning, everyone received the same bonus. It was $6,349.13, an exact derivative of the new money that we brought in. But there's one really important thing, Sterling, and I think it's something that you said. They only get a bonus if we maintain 98% or better retention. We take care of our existing clients. It doesn't matter if it was $200 million, 98 or better. And so every year, we've continued to set those goals. And the next year, I was exhausted. And I said, you guys want to do that again? And they said, yeah, we'd love to do that again. And so I said, well, we don't have to do 50 again. And they said, well, we always have to do better the next year. So the next year was 55, the next year was 60. So this year, it is $100 million of new money in this calendar year. We are, as of October 1st, at $128 million of new money. So it was a real breakthrough in terms of how to manage my time and really focus on, because our clients think of me as their advisor.
Yeah.
But I don't do any of the work anymore, and I tell them that. So it's really been a real epiphany for me and really accelerated the growth.
Okay, I've got a lot of questions to come back on that, but that's fascinating. Scott, tell us what, for you, if you think about the business, what was a breakthrough moment that really changed the trajectory, and what did you learn?
So I think a breakthrough moment for me was early on. In Australia, our industry is very fragmented. It was very stockbroking or financial planning for people without money. And for me, it was ascertaining what I wanted to do. And I was sitting there as a stockbroker. I come in at the beginning of the day, and there was a zero on the sheet, and you were incentivized to build transactions for clients. And I just didn't feel that was the way that I wanted my career to develop. So I made a decision on that day. I'll never forget it. I was a young kid, didn't believe in myself at all. But I made a decision then and there that I was going to change my direction and start to focus on building more client assets that I'd look at the whole of their balance sheet. And again, that was early, didn't really know what I was doing. I was young and I didn't believe in myself.
Were you comfortable at the time calling yourself a financial advisor?
Well, I remember people saying to me, I'd make a transactional recommendation, and they'd say, well, let me go check with my financial advisor. And I'd say, well, what am I? And that was a kind of a moment for me where I was looking for relevance, and I was looking for for where my career was going. I was a lot younger, and I had a lot more hair on my head. But it was a focus for me to actually, it was a really defining moment for me. And there was probably a few others along the way, and you get so much better with age, there's no doubt. And I remember then about 10 years later struggling, really trying to develop my business. And I remember a colleague who was my boss at the time, and he said it, we were out one night, and I was sort of reaching for help. And I remember saying to him, can you help me get some of these clients? And he looked at me, and he was a bit more colourful than the language that I'm about to use.
We're off the record here.
He basically said it to me straight, I'm not helping you at all. You've got to go out and do it yourself. And I remember waking up the next day thinking, crippies, it really is up to me. And it's a moment that I look back on with a great degree of relevance for me personally, because I realised that, I had to do it myself. I still didn't believe in myself, but I had to do it. And then I guess the other breakthrough moment and the most proud moment of my career was, picking up and leaving UBS was really hard. We wanted to create a different business that created a more shared incentive. We were in the big wirehouse brokers, as I'm sure most of you are aware, or big wirehouse banks. The incentive is very individual. So what I kill, I eat. And we really wanted to change that conversation to be much more about a one-team approach to our client family. Understand that every advisor is different. Every one of you in this room have got different skills from each other, but we're all complementary. And the breakthrough moment for me was having the courage to jump up, realise it was going to be hard, We didn't pay ourselves for 2.5 years, but it was all worth it, and that's my breakthrough.
You know, that's giving questions in my mind as well. One of the trends we're seeing in the U.S. that's very significant is this notion of professionalization of the business, and the advisor who is moving from the mindset of practitioner to CEO of their business, working on the business rather than in the business, being a leader of a team, and driving optimal business results, written strategy, professionalization of the functions within your team. That's something you're kind of alluding to. Could you both speak to that?
It's interesting, Sterling, because you know, when you say that, it exactly describes where I am in my business currently. And you know, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that our clients are used to dealing with us. I literally did change my title from president to CEO. I think it sends a different message to the client. And I think that, you know, the challenge is that as we do that, I don't want our clients to feel like I'm tossing them off, I'm handing them off to a junior advisor. It's a very delicate balance, and the way that I'm trying to convey that is basically to say, you know, it's not fair for me to hog this relationship, and frankly, I don't do any of the work anymore. I think it's time for you to meet the people who are actually making this happen for you. To not only create the financial plan, to create the outcome, to monitor it, and make sure that you continue to do the things that are necessary to achieve your goals. So that's basically, and that's resonating quite well. It's not happening overnight. It'll happen over a period of years, because I don't want to go, you know, make them feel, you know, cold turkey. And the fact of the matter is that I tell them,
But
I'm always going to be their advisor.
It's forced you to address the issue of scalability in your business, so that the growth that you're creating, that more business is not directly correlated to more work.
Exactly. It's amazing. I'm very big on efficiencies. It's the nurse in me. You know, you work in intensive care and you got to make decisions and happen. And I want to do one thing and do it well, and that is creating the brand and, you know, being the rainmaker. That's my job, and everything else is delegated.
Scott, talk about the transition in your business from advisor to leader.
I find that really hard. I find that's one of my biggest challenges. And, you know, building a team of 5 immediate around me, I find giving up big accounts, or not being in front of big accounts, but still being required to go and grow and build the business, I find that really challenging. So for us, you know, and it's not an easy business, our business, especially in this day and age. You know, we're expected to have sort of Ritz-Carlton level of service with a DHL level of efficiency and delivery. And so there's so many roles that we've got to play. You've got to be across so many things. So I'm a control freak, and I find that a really hard thing to manage, to give that up. But I've got to, if we want to build scalability and we want to build our business and attract the clients that we're looking for.
If the business grows how you expect and want it to over 5 years, you have to address that scalability.
Totally. But I've also got to maintain that from the outset. If the conversation is held at the outset, this is my team and these are the roles that we all play, and build complementary skills in your team, then you're really halfway there. And it's about the first initial management of expectation with the client, and the first conversation that is the most defining conversation, because you set the standard there on day one. So my guys around me and girls are brilliant. I've got to be conscious of their ambitions, their goals, but then we talk to each other about what goals are emerging. I love origination. That's my focus. I enjoy the process of origination. And I think if you look at investment banks and how investment banks over the years segregated their various businesses, you know, if you look at equities businesses, you know, you've got equity capital markets business, there's originators and then there's syndicators. So if we're playing our role at every stage along the journey, then I found that that's worked for me to scale, but it's not easy.
Now, one thing,
I was just going to say, you know, it's really interesting as Scott was talking. I think the biggest thing for me was the change occurred when I realized that in order to connect with our clients, I need to connect with our team and to really leverage their abilities. Mark Tabergian, who is a U.S. based
CEO of Pershing.
Exactly. He said the greatest injustice we commit against another human being is to underestimate them. And I think that was, for so many years, like Scott, I tended to kind of, well, this is a client, I have to do all the meetings, I've got the relationship, etc. And the more that I recognize and acknowledge the skills and the brilliance of the people on my team, the more our clients are feeling comfortable with the idea of just meeting with them. So it's again, it doesn't happen overnight, but it is a powerful way to build tremendous scale.
And just on that, Patty, one of my more ego bruising moments was, one of my largest clients, a bit of a trophy client, and he was originally my junior, Will. He's 10 years younger than me, great kid, really analytical, really good strength. They prefer to deal with him.
Yeah.
That client prefers to deal with him on a his day-to-day interactions. He played his role.
Which should be ego empowering.
Well, that's right.
Transition and
I don't need it anymore, but you still maintain relevance in that conversation. But I think empowering your team, what Patty said, is really, really important. And showing them, allowing them to be vulnerable, allowing them to make mistakes, working through those mistakes with them, saying, this is not bad, we learn from this, this is how we move forward.
That reminds me of a story. It's kind of like,
get Sterling out of
I know,
this.
of course, I don't want to interrupt you, but it does remind me of a story. I don't know what it's like to teach a young person to drive here in the UK, but at 16 years of age, our kids get their learning permits, right? And for me, the greatest analogy was when someone said, we're so used to driving the car, but at some point when we're teaching our kids how to drive, they're just going to learn so much sitting in the passenger seat, right? Eventually, we have to give them the keys to the car. And so as we do that, I don't know about you guys, but I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to get into next, and they are going to make mistakes, right? But really, as long as they know you have their back, and the clients also know we have their back, and again, it's the way to develop and mentor young advisors.
Now, you said something in passing there that caught my attention. You just said, and we're expected to deliver Ritz-Carlton service.
Right.
Let's talk for a moment on that. It's very emblematic of a theme we're studying closely in the U.S. market. This notion of commoditization, the perception clients have that not only financial planning, but frankly investment success is commoditized. We talk to advisors about this all the time. We spend a great deal of our focus talking about that elevated client experience. The discussion is whether or not it's an investment or service business. What if clients perceive it as a hospitality business, where that elegant experience differentiates you? We spend a lot of time thinking about that. People have suggested that maybe we don't think investment excellence is important. We think it's absolutely paramount, but it's possible advisors perceive it increasingly as table stakes. So if you can marry that with that elegant service component, you have the opportunity to differentiate yourself and command a premium price. If you think of coffee in the U.S. was highly commoditized. A cup of coffee at any shop cost you 50 cents. It was caffeine delivery, and then Starbucks came on the scene and convinced you to pay 40x for what you thought was a little bit better client experience. Respond to that, and how does that apply to wealth management?
I don't think you can commoditize emotional relationships between human beings.
But trusted advisory relationships.
I just think that if you're sitting down and you're dealing with complex family situations, you're talking about tier 1 that might have sold a business, they might have dysfunction at tier 2, they might have tier 3 emerging, and they don't know what to do. There's no strategy around that. So if you're having a connection with a client that's not talking about what investment markets are doing next quarter, that comes. But if you're establishing an emotional relationship with a client that gets into their head, understands that everyone is different, understand their balance sheet, understand their assets, their liabilities, understand their structures, and then understand the unique situation that family's in, what's their background. Everyone is different. And if you're showing that you care, and you're showing that you can sit down and make a solution for families that can sit and say, well, in my country, it beggars belief how many families disintegrate over, in particular, the division of rural assets. And families are just broken everywhere. It's amazing what you see. So I just don't think you can commoditize the conversation that requires real planning across generations.
I agree. I think that an algorithm or a robo is never going to replace you. They just aren't. Not when we're doing real financial planning. I think, Scott, I would take it one step further. You not only want to get into their head, you want to get into their hearts. Because that's when you build that bond. Find out what's most important to them, their values. It's really interesting. We just, I did an exercise recently with a client who's kind of one of these big burly guys, you know, that he's an attorney but he runs a union over in the United States, and really, really macho. And by the time I was done this exercise, he was crying. And it's amazing. Nobody in my office could believe that this man was in tears. So when we connect with people and understand what's important, you will never lose that client. And more importantly, to your point, the investments really are a means to an end. And they are important because you've got to really focus on that outcome that they're looking for. So that really is the means to an end. But I also think it's important for us to help them articulate what that's really going to look like, and what's important, and what do they worry about, so that, you know, we can, you know, use the tools that we have to help them get there faster, make it easier for them, and prevent those blind spots and those issues that often arise.
What percentage of your fee do you justify by simply keeping your clients from doing something stupid?
Oh yeah, I basically tell them all the time. Really, I would say 90% of what we do, and I tell people this straight out, that, you know, really my job is really to save you from yourself.
But if you haven't earned that trust, then you're...
Well, I think at that point, in the beginning, I think what resonates with people, you know, it's like we're in the experience economy. Amazon, when I buy something on Amazon, you also get this message, oh, well, people like you also bought this, this, and this. So what clients are really hiring us for is our experience, is to use, you know, put it this way, I tell people all the time, you know, when you think about the first time that you did something, whether it be riding a bike or hitting a golf ball or even maybe public speaking, how often did you get it right the first time? We helped over 1,000 people, 1,000 families, sell their businesses, retire in comfort, transfer their wealth to the next generation. You get to do it once. That's really what they're paying us to do, and it's worth every bit of the fee that we charge.
We describe this transition by saying that business has simply shifted from what was a performance-driven, benchmark-oriented process to what is now a client-driven, outcome-oriented solution. Sounds subtle, it is, but there's a profound shift in the value proposition.
Fair enough.
You've talked a lot about the value proposition evolution in your business. Tell us a little bit about that, and also, what do you think's changed in wealth management over the last few years, Scott?
I think there's a lot of obvious things that have changed that we don't know. I mean, regulatory change, you know, all of those issues that have made it harder. And we've just come out of what you guys went through 5 years ago. So, you know, you know, you said it earlier in your opening remarks. The press doesn't sit up there and value us in any way, shape, or form. They're looking at us as the evil guys that are trying to sell some sort of product to someone. To me, I just completely disagree with that. I completely disagree. I think the value of us as an advisor is critical because I've seen the value that we provide. A strong, you know, I mean, if my footy team doesn't have a really strong plan and a really strong identification of people's roles, then they're not going to succeed. If they do, then they are going to succeed. The same thing applies to you know, multi-generational wealth planning.
Yeah.
But I think today's advisor is more challenged because information is more readily available quickly, and I think today's advisor needs to be as much a psychologist, as an investment professional, as a family planning you know, person. So I think it's understanding yourself, understanding what you're good at, and, you know, focusing on those attributes.
Can you quickly, what's the biggest challenge that you face in your business, and what's your biggest strategic priority right now?
So challenge for me, I'm a worrier.
Yeah.
I worry about complacency. I worry about what I'm missing, what I'm not seeing. You know, we run, for us, you know, we've had quite a strong period of growth. We really focus on a niche market, and it's kind of worked. And I feel a great degree of responsibility if you take on really large families. So for me, I don't think it's within me to be complacent, but I think that's a challenge. My team is always a challenge, helping them.
Yeah.
Having millennials in your team is not easy as well, because they're knocking on the door and wanting to take that quarterback position pretty quickly. So patience is critical. So I think the biggest challenges are as much ourselves. For me, I think it's also looking after ourselves, looking after myself, my state of mind, my health, and I think that's a challenge because it is busy. Things happen without you planning, and I personally find that a real challenge.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that everyone in this room has daily challenges.
Yeah.
It's about your ability to get through that, build the right people around you, not be complacent.
And what would you say is the biggest single largest strategic priority right now for your team?
Well, to me, we've had a large degree of growth, and so it's sort of making sure that we're bedding down that growth. So for me, the strategic priority is making sure that everyone's playing their role, focusing on the client. We can talk about strategic priorities in terms of their technology or business development. I'll leave that to my colleagues.
Yeah.
I'm an equal shareholder in a business where everyone's got their role. I'm going to let those guys worry about that. If I worry about that,
execution and delivery on the promise.
To me, it's execution and delivery of what my daily responsibility is, and that's looking after the clients of which I've originated and put through a system of which I feel I would hate someone to think of me if I'm going through the origination phase. This is what we're going to do for you, and then 3 months later we don't do it.
Patty, in your business, if you think about where you want it to be in 3 years, 5 years, what will be the biggest challenge? And also, what's your strategic priority?
It's interesting, and I think if I could just dovetail on what Scott said, as we build, as we, originate or bring in new clients, the most important thing is capacity, right? To be able to deliver on the promise. I've always believed, I've got like epiphanies and then I have epiphanettes. I had an epiphanet, someone once said to me, that when you're looking at building your firm, always hire ahead. Hire before you think you actually need that next person, and they will pay for themselves the first year. It is, for me, it has been so true, and it's made me feel very comfortable and very confident that when I bring in a new client, that we will be able to deliver on the promise that I'm making to that person. So hire ahead. I think as I think through the next 3 to 5 years, I'm looking for the next rainmaker. I am the advisor, I'm the brand right now, and I think that that's fine. I use it, and I don't know if this will resonate for you guys. We have Kentucky Fried Chicken in the States, and Colonel Sanders. I'm kind of like the Colonel Sanders, the picture on the box, but I don't make the chicken. I don't, I had the original recipe, but that's pretty much it. So, and that's the way that I phrase it in terms of that. So who's going to be the next Colonel at Key Financial? And
that succession planning priority.
Yeah, that terrible S word.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the case in your country, but in our country, the big thing is advisors don't have succession plans, right? And I think it's probably because it's so related to that D word, right? Death, right? Succession means I'm leaving my career and I'm going to die, right? And I think subconsciously we just don't want to deal with it. And yet, it's very, very important. We have a responsibility, and that's part of the message that I'm sending to my clients. It is a responsibility that I have to you and your family.
It's at the heart of professionalism and continuity, and a business that's looking forward. We're crazy on this at Barron's. In fact, we're going to add as a qualitative measure to our ranking the question, does your firm have a written succession plan?
One of our strategies around that was to make sure that we taking away the individual incentive was really critical, and building into people's KPIs across the business, that one of their KPIs is to ensure that they're passing down clients through the system to other advisors within the firm.
I want to leave a lot of time for audience Q&A. One quick question before we turn to them. Both of you have talked a lot about growth and rainmaking and that power momentum in the business. What's worked the best for you? What's worked, what hasn't worked? Quickly, because we want to go to questions, but can you sum up what's the secret sauce to growth at Key Financial?
I would say that social media, the jury is still out as to whether or not social media really works. So that is a pending thing. I've started to do podcasts, and I found that to be very effective. That is actually getting a lot of traction and a lot of visibility. It's referrals. As it relates to referrals, it's about really the communication and really understanding that when it comes down to it, every client, everybody, it's human nature that we're all tuned into one radio station. WIFM. What's in it for me? So as we talk to our clients about referrals and introductions, I basically talk about what that means to them in terms of as we grow, we're adding more services, that concierge. When people get sick, we're taking care of their long-term care needs now. We have a department that does that. I just hired an attorney instead of going out. If clients have a legal question, an estate planning question, we can save them that money. I've got somebody in-house, thanks to the referrals and thanks to the fact that because of them, we continue to grow, and I can afford to reinvest to improve the services on a day-to-day basis.
Scott, what's the formula for growth for your team, and what's working?
Saying no is critical, and really, really knowing your market that you're looking at. So if we have people that come in, and you might get referrals from some of your bigger clients, you've got to respect that referral, but then you've got to reflect that referral to the right area. So, we sort of, I know we talked about minimums before, but for us to maintain sanity, we do have a minimum. We won't deal with anyone under $5 million of investable wealth.
And you've got scientific about profiling exactly who you can have.
Very much. And then, but I'll always have a meeting with any referral, an initial meeting, and just treat that with respect. Say, you're in such a great position. You're in such a great position, but what you need, I don't deliver. My services are, you might, for perhaps, lower FUM clients, sorry to be crude, you say, you're probably looking for a financial planning type service. So for me, it's saying no, really knowing your target market, focusing on your circles of influence. I reckon that there's probably 5 circles of influence that I've been lucky enough to have through my career. Work those. They don't come along very often.
I'm going to challenge Patty a little bit. She says the jury's out on social media. I think it's back in, and it's hugely important. You say the referrals are what's driving it. I would submit that with some of your families, they're saying to their friends, we're using Patty Brennan. That family is Googling you, seeing the social media, I like her. Let's talk to her first. And that's how it happens. So with that, let's move to the audience. Who wants to start us off on a question for Scott and Patty? First one's the hardest. Okay, there we go. Are we going to have a microphone? There's one coming, so could you bring it over here, sir? We've got right in the front row. Or, I saw this one first, so we'll go there, then we'll go there second. Thank you. Just state your name. And
Right, question for Scott. So you run pretty big portfolios, but you run on an advisory basis. In the UK, that would be very surprising. Can you tell me how you do it?
Yeah, we do. So we have a chief investment officer that is non-client facing, and we have an investment team that sits around our chief investment officer. We don't do any stock research or anything like that. That team does asset allocation research, and we have models for each asset class. On top of that, we have a product team that has 5 people in there, so we'll assess any alts, call it private debt or private equity opportunity, and then we have a fixed income team. So we've actually got a high cost investment team that enables us to build our models and have one view of the world. So we come together as a firm 4 times a week. We discuss the world. Our CIO presents, and she publishes only asset allocation research, so we'll have tactical tilts based on our call. And then we have sort of sector experts within her. So if I'm looking at Aussie equities, I know exactly what our strategy is with Aussie equities. We outsource that, be it through discretionary portfolios that are managed externally. We try to manage no money internally. So we build our models accordingly. The challenge with that is to build scale is really hard. But I also think that everyone is different, and everyone's got, prejudice and pre-existing portfolios with money. So, we might have someone. We've got a challenge at the moment. We've got 2 business sales that have literally got $150 million in cash sitting there, which is a challenge right now. So we need to have that internal capability to run a fixed income portfolio. So, but I personally, I won't make any direct investment decisions. I rely on our chief investment officer. But that's our model. You know, that everyone's got different models, and I respect, you know. So I hope that's the question.
But when a change needs to be made, somebody's got to have the permission to make that change, or the client's got to give it every time.
Totally. So that means that for us, we're a really high touch business. So we're very strict on our review process. We'll make sure that, you know, our quarterly reviews are quite meaningful. For some of our larger clients, we'll have monthly check-ins. And it's not perfect, but it just means that with a team, you're constantly in contact. You've got to systemize that, and it doesn't happen with a push of a button. What's appropriate for one might not be appropriate for another. So it very much is an advisory business where changes are made at an asset allocation level. Obviously, the assets are working within each of those asset classes along the way, but that's the model that we've created.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks. Just state your name and your firm.
Thank you. It's Aidan Watts, Grey Dolphin. Really interested in circles of influence as a way of driving growth. I think what I wanted you to maybe touch on, Scott and Patty, is who those people are, what their profile looks like. I've heard some very weird and wacky ones. But also how, as you grow your business as a more junior advisor, how in a heavily regulated area where really buying someone a beer is put under extreme scrutiny, how you develop those relationships.
I can start with this at least. You know, in the United States, financial planners and advisors are all focused on CPAs and attorneys, and I have terrific relationships with those professionals as well. In addition to that, though, I have great relationships with people, for example, in outplacement agencies. I do a seminar for people who have recently been downsized, and this seminar is for really high-level executives. And I go in and talk about, you know, the mistakes people make during transition, and some of the do's and don'ts as they go through this process. And I also, you know, encourage them and tell them that, you know, I've also been able to introduce people to their next employer, and so that's been really effective. Long-term care facilities. We have basically they're kind of an age-in-place facilities, and we're developing relationships with those individuals as well. And that's really a terrific market that is untapped in the United States for advisors.
That's a really, really good question, and I'm going to give you a non-direct answer to that from my experience. And I think that it's continuous effort, and it's continually looking for the right clients. And in your client family, there'll be those that shout from the rafters, and there will be those that won't. So if I look at my own experience, if I have a really good experience, be it with someone else, be it an accountant or be it an experience that I have, I'm a rafter shouter. I will promote that person or that business. That's me. That's my personality. Not everyone is like that. So if I've been lucky enough to have 4 really good circles of influence that frankly you fall upon with luck. If you ask that person, if you talk to that person and let them know that you're open for business, then they're more naturally going to be thinking of you. So my answer to that is, it is luck, continuous effort. If you work hard and be nice to people, along the way you will find throughout your career circles of influence that will recommend you or refer you to other clients or refer you to other people. Because that's the best way to grow a business, is referrals from existing clients.
Can I also answer the question in terms of the younger advisors with regulatory framework, because it's big in the United States as well? It's really developing systems. Even though every client is different, we have a repeatable process that every client goes through, so they really can't mess up. And nobody's in a meeting by themselves.
Okay. We have another question here.
Deborah Wilson, Barclays Wealth. Thank you so much for both of your comments. I've taken a huge amount away from that, and probably more in that short space of time than in years in the industry. So seriously, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a question for each of you. Scott, how did you perhaps approach attracting your ultra-high net worth client base when your firm was perhaps in the brand build stage of awareness? And Patty, I'm fascinated to know how you retain approximately 98% of your existing clients, particularly when maybe your firm simply doesn't offer something that they've convinced themselves they need and want, because we can't all do everything all the time for everyone. Thank you.
Great questions. Scott, you want to start?
Thank you for your question, your comments. So we started 7 years ago, and we were already, it wasn't an entrepreneurial venture, it was a really targeted venture. We knew exactly what we were wanting to do. Brand was critical. We weren't building an office above a milk bar or an office above an off license. We really went to say, right, we want the big end of town, so we've actually got to invest in making ourselves look relevant. So we had to make an investment early. We really focused on our brand. The evolution of our name and moving forwards and upwards is sort of what our name stood for. And we were really clear around how we presented our printed material and our office material. So we had to be all on the same page with that. Some people didn't value marketing, some people didn't value brand. Our brand is alive and moving every day, and that was a really important thing for us. In terms of attracting clients, we were really clear around, I was really clear, probably I've not overstepped the contractor's issue, but I had a responsibility to clients that just meant that I couldn't leave UBS and sort of turn around three months later and say, oh, here I am, I'll pop my head up somewhere else. That didn't work for me. I felt I had a moral obligation to let those people know, nothing specific what I was doing. So we were able to start pretty early. We started probably with about $700 million across the eight of us. And, it's funny, when I look back on it, we never believed it wasn't going to work. We just believed it was there right from the outset. And we played really strongly together. We played our roles. And we had to change big time, because this was a group of eight of us that were all being paid basically commissions.
$700 million at the time, and it's the same eight at $6.5 billion total now. Wow.
Fantastic. So in terms of, for me, the retention, I think it goes back to Sterling's earlier comments. We manage the money for our clients internally, and I do believe their money is a means to an end. So it's both the investment management as well as the financial planning together. It really creates sticky clients, because when you're running scenarios, what if you do this versus what if you do that? Here's the pros and cons of each alternative. What do you feel most comfortable with? And they begin to develop their own future, and we've helped them. The other thing is, we not only do a plan, I don't believe in plans, I believe in planning. It's an ongoing process, because things are going to change. It's not a map, it's more like GPS. Because one thing that we do know is that client situations, people lose their jobs, people pass away, they get sick, things of that nature. We always have to have plan B. And it's amazing, because when they come in and we've run those numbers, what if something happened to one of you? What if one of you got sick? They really appreciate that, because we're thinking ahead. And they really appreciate that we're using our experience and saying, this is what we found with people just like you, and here's how we would solve it. So that creates stickiness.
I have an answer to your question as well about growth. We study growth. We have an intense focus on that in the US. Our perspective, it's not about which firm or which channel, whether it's independent or large firm. There's pockets of excellence and mediocrity everywhere. Where we see the most consistency among those who are growing, it's those who have shifted that initial meeting where they set expectations away from saying this is how we can and will manage your money, and showing a deck that illustrates that, to people who are going in with a pad of paper and a pencil and saying, what is the intent of your family's wealth? It just opens up an entirely new discussion framework. And that is a consistent behavior of those that are in the upper quartile of growth globally. We're going to take one more quick question, and then I have some closing comments and an idea I'd like to ask them for. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Anthony Robinson from Barron. I'll try to be as quick as possible. So I got to think about podcasts, which I find fascinating. I want to know how you choose the subjects. How long are they? Do they reach into like marketing promotion? Do they get sort of regulatory concerns? How does that?
Sure. It's a great question. Thank you for asking it. So I will tell you that we started doing them in December. I didn't want to do them every week. I didn't want to have that commitment and create that expectation. I will tell you, it is much easier to do a podcast than you might imagine. It is much harder to maintain it on an ongoing basis and to have fresh content. I will also tell you that I was telling Beverly actually earlier, my earliest podcasts are literally cringeworthy. So it's okay. Do it anyway. Like anything else, you actually do get better at it.
Yeah.
So I would say, just do it, try it, and you're right.
don't look for ROI.
Right,
It's a
exactly.
rabbit hole.
Oh, give it 3 years, guys. Anything you try new, my philosophy, whether it be advertising in magazines or whether it be the social media, give it 3 years before you make a decision as to whether it's working.
Okay, Patty and Scott are going to hang out for the day and at the cocktail reception at the end of the day as well, so you have more time to interact with them. We're all here because in one way or another, we're in the business of advice. So I would like to ask Scott and Patty to offer a single high conviction, actionable idea, a piece of advice for the audience based on your wisdom and experience as an advisor. Patty?
I would say that, I have so many things that I'd like to share, but I would say that, first of all, remember what changed my business 5 years ago. We have more than doubled, okay? Coaches are a big thing here. A lot of people are talking about coaches. The thing is, they're kind of expensive, right? You have among you some of the best coaches in the world.
Yeah.
Talk to each other. Be open. Share with each other. That's how I've grown. One little conversation. The other thing that I would share is MIT and Harvard. A Harvard professor teamed up with MIT, and there is now the MIT Age Lab.
Yeah.
Write it down, Google it, check it out. They're talking about the future of the advice business and framing and maybe branding ourselves as longevity advisors. Dr. Joe Coughlin wrote an amazing book called The Longevity Economy. It's phenomenal, and the work that they're doing that is directly applicable to our business is terrific.
Yeah, I second that. Check it out. It's great content. You can either Google the MIT Age Lab or Dr. Joe Coughlin.
Exactly.
Scott?
I've just read a really cool book, and the book is a story of two guys who, in 1968, they come from a little town outside of Melbourne called Torquay, and Torquay is a surf town. And these two guys realised that Torquay, it ain't warm in winter, I tell you. So for them to surf, they started making wetsuits. And what they built over a 50-year period was an incredible business called Rip Curl. And Torquay is a really amazing part of the world in terms of it's fostered a great degree of entrepreneurship based on people's passion. And these guys were passionate. But what they did, and this book tells a story that's fantastic, is that they maintained authenticity for their whole career and their whole life. In that, if you're a surfer, you have to be a surfer to buy a wetsuit. But they maintain focus on that product to be the best, and they maintain authenticity. So for me, if I look around town, that I can still wear a Rip Curl t-shirt, and my kid will still wear it and not think that he's a loser because his dad is wearing I shouldn't say that, because his dad's wearing a Rip Curl t-shirt. It's a really cool book. It's just been released. It's an author by the name of Tim Baker, who has written a number of different surfing stories. But the takeaway that I got is be authentic, be yourself, focus on what you're good at, know yourself, and if you try to change and do funky things like, try and change, then it kind of risks. So this is a really good example of long-term, 50 years over their life and career, being authentic and sticking to what they know.
Yeah, those are two great actionable takeaways. I picked up 5 more. First, read another book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. The second one is Adopt a CEO Mentality. Advisor is CEO working on the business as much as in the business. Third one is this notion of addressing scalability. Your team can only learn so much in the passenger seat. Give them the keys. Hire ahead was number 4. Before you need that next person on the team, think of what your org chart 5 years from now for your team is going to look like. And the 5th one, your brand needs to be alive and moving forward every day. Scott and Patty, you've left us a wealth of information. You were very open about your business and your challenges. We deeply appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you
Please,
so much. Thank you.